Hey there, my name's Mark McCartney and welcome to the What is a Good Life podcast. Over the last 2 years, I've interviewed over 170 people around this question, not to provide you with the universal answer, but to help you to find and define your own answer to this question. If you're new to this podcast, my objective when I started interviewing all these people, it wasn't to define the good life. It was to just share people's investigations, their curiosities, and also to share meaningful, reflective, and sometimes intimate conversations amongst people. So while I hope you get some inspiration from the guests, it's more to inspire your own inquiry, your own investigation into defining what is a good life for you. On the 49th episode of the What is a Good Life podcast, I'm delighted to introduce Dean Boland as our guest. Dean is a co-founder and CEO of PolkaStays, a property developer, investor, and serviced accommodation consultant. In this episode, Dean shares his experience of the toll that several of his corporate roles took on his well-being before he stepped into something new. We also discuss what kept him in the same loop of repeatedly doing something that he didn't think was good for him. We explore our desire to do what's normal and the role societal expectations play in our lives. Additionally, we delve into the importance of self-reflection and therapy in creating more headspace, as well as spending more time on things that bring us fulfilment. We both reflect on narratives that we've sold ourselves at different times in our lives, and the pain that can be perpetuated when we don't explore it ourselves, and the role of hope and the people around us in creating welcome change. I assume Dean's experience in the corporate world will resonate with many, and while this definitely isn't a prescription for anyone else's life, his journey of creating more time for reflection and inquiry, as well as the consequent changes in his life, will give us all something to contemplate. Look, I really enjoyed this conversation with Dean. A lot of the revelations that he made in his life by going through the process of therapy resonated a lot with me. So I think you'll take a lot from this conversation. And if you do enjoy it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're on the podcasting platforms, please leave a review, as I greatly appreciate your support at this stage of my podcasting journey. So without further ado, the 49th episode of the What is a Good Life podcast. Dean, thank you very, very much for joining me on the What is a Good Life podcast today. After our conversation last week, I've been very much looking forward to this and seeing where the hell this conversation goes.
Thanks for having me.
So as I tend to kick these conversations off with, Dean, it's with the question of, is there a question you're trying to answer as you move through life?
I think there's more a collection of questions that I've been trying to answer more recently. And that's why do we do things that we know don't make us happy, but more so we may not know that they're not making us happy right now. Or why do we just persist with certain things without taking a step back and trying to work out whether actually is this the right thing for me?
And what's your journey been like with that question?
I think more so in terms of so I'm thinking of it more in terms of employment and the amount of time we spend in a job role or working for an employer, and then again the amount of time that the majority of people complain about working for that employer or having that job. And my journey over the last few years has been a bit of a slog, a bit of a struggle. And it's a question I've asked myself a lot over the last few years is, or it's certain things that I've been trying to do more recently in the last recent years, is to put things in place that, once I realized I was doing something day in, day out that was no longer bringing me joy, or affecting my mental health, or affecting my just my well-being and everything else around me, then the minute I started to put things in place to try and work out how I can make that change, things automatically started to get better. And it's only in the last 9-10 months that I've been able to actually break that mold and leave the corporate world, and actually take the leap of faith and work solely on my own businesses. But it's only now more recently that I've had the time to actually reflect on that period of what was, 3-4 years of this just storm and cloud of, knowing that what I was doing every day, the slog of working for somebody else, and the feeling underappreciated and undervalued, overworked and underpaid, as I'm sure the majority of people do. But it's only now having that time to actually reflect and work out that I've been constantly asking that question, like what stopped me all them years ago from taking that leap of faith? What stopped me all those years ago when I had those niggling thoughts, and the days that you're working 10, 12, 13 hours, and you get home and you're mentally drained, physically drained, absolutely exhausted, but there isn't anything that I had nothing left in me to drive me. So yeah, I've been looking back, reflecting a lot recently on the decisions, not just the decisions I made, but like trying to work out like why did I do those things? Why did I persist with that job? Why did I work for that employer for 5 years? Why did I do 10, 12, 14-hour days? Like what was that all about? And I think part of that is that is me. That's ingrained in me, and I give my own business now completely 100%, and I go all out, and I will work 14, 15 plus hour days. But the joy that I get now is completely different, and the impact that that's had on my life and everything in my life, friendships, relationships, my energy levels, my drive, my fitness, like just it's had such an impact on everything.
And when you've been reflecting all this, Dean, and like I'm sure this is a very relatable scenario for everyone, and each to their own, and whatever anyone decides or what works for them. In terms of your experience, like when you reflect back on it, what do you think kept you there? I know you're saying you've got obviously a high level of energy or drive, and you're putting all those like similar areas into your own business at the moment. But what do you think? What do you think kept you in that loop for a period of time anyway?
I think for a long time, the pressures of society, or the idea of fitting in with the norm. I remember I didn't. So when I left my job at the end of last year, I didn't actually tell my mum for quite a while, because I knew what her answer would be, like that shock, that, oh my, like what are you going to do? Even though she's seen my businesses and seen how well and successful they are, and how well they're growing, I think there's a lot of people that was just ingrained. It's just ingrained in her. Even now, she asks me like, "So, do you think you'll ever get a job?" I'm like, "No, mum. This is my job. Like, I don't like." She doesn't really. I think with a lot of people as well that I speak to, and my mum's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just very much ingrained in a lot of people that like that's what you do. You go to school, you go to college or university, you get your education, then you just get a job, and that's your life. You work, whatever your working pattern is. Mine was Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and yeah, so that fitting in with the norm, or not even fitting in, just or not. I wasn't particularly trying to fit in. That was just what everyone else was doing, and it was you just you end up so easily just going with the flow, and before you know it, a year's passed, 2 years passed, 3 years passed, and I don't think we ever take the time to actually just step back and take a look at ourselves, and have a look like where we've been and where we're going, and then reevaluate, actually, is this right for me? Is this because for a lot of people it is right for them. Like my my sister's happily employed, like loves her job, has 2 beautiful children, and that's great. That's her level of that's she has happiness within that, and she has her joy. But for me, it was more, I was giving everything that I had plus more, and really felt like wasn't getting anything back, and there was nothing satisfying my soul. So just repeat the actual question, because I've gone off on a tangent. You
No, 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 no.
said,
You haven't at all, man. Because I asked you what was your process like with that question, with asking yourself that question, like of like why do we do the things that we don't want to do for so long, and you're just kind of saying, well, so much of this stuff is kind of ingrained within us, like the I don't know, as humans, obviously we really struggle with the idea of not going in line with the norm. I think even from a previous guest kind of was alluding to the kind of evolutionary biological aspect of why we struggle not to want to be or to struggle to leave the group or to go against the group. But I think it's really interesting. Like I think we're not that aware sometimes of just how I don't know how damaging that can be to us at times. Like I'm not saying that everyone gets to go and live their dream life. Everyone has responsibilities. Everyone has different things that they have to do. But I definitely think that we don't take enough stock of just how much, like, I don't know, it's almost like we're willing to suffer any kind of amount of suffering to stay kind of in air quotes in the norm or being normal without really kind of reflecting on like, Jesus, how much does this hurt? You know, and you're kind of saying now satisfying my soul. Like it's incredible that, you know, even when your mother sees that you're doing well now and in your new things, she's still kind of saying almost like, will you go back and get a job kind of thing. Like I think we don't give this enough consideration, or we don't have enough kind of consciousness around like the significance of kind of taking stock in our lives and seeing what works for us.
yeah, definitely. And I heard a great quote only recently, and it said, "You can't read the label if you're inside the jar." And it was like, that is like, if I wish I'd have read something like that several years ago, or somebody would have been able to just, pick me up. I think that's what I needed, and that's what I've been able to do more recently, is actually pick myself up out of a situation and place myself on the outside and take a look and reevaluate. Actually, is this like, is this right for me? Because I can get overly excited and run away on a project and dive into it and work all the hours, but without taking that step back, which I've been able to do more recently, and reevaluate certain things. I want to make sure that I don't end up just back in that cycle, and then I'm reevaluating 2 years down the line and go, oh great, I've done it again. Like, so I think more recently I've taken time to step out of the jar and read the label, have a look at myself and what's going on, have a look at my situation, have a look at where, if I continue what I'm doing, where that's going, and just ask myself serious questions like, is this right for me? And I ask myself that a lot more recently, in terms of anything that I do. Be it going to an event, meeting up with friends, family. Like, I need to check with myself. Actually, is this right for me right now? And there's a lot of things that can come into that. How am I feeling right now? What have I got on, and what do I want to get out of what I've got on right now? And how important is that event, or even if it's a work event or a social, like whatever these things are that come up in my diary. Like, I think, but I don't. What I struggle with is realizing or understanding where I've got that from. It's kind of something that's just developed over a short period more recently. And I think what I've been trying to work out is like, why didn't I have this skill 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago? and then I'd be in a completely different situation to where I am. But I also try and realize that, you know, everything does happen for a reason. I certainly wouldn't be in the position I'm in now without certain things that happened in my past. So I am grateful for where I am right now, but I think my mind just works like that anyway. I overanalyze. I'm very analytical. That was the role I played in a lot of my corporate jobs, data analysis, application analysis. So I think I've always been a very analytical person. I'll question everything 400 times before I come up with the answer that's most suited to that situation.
When you think of just that idea, or that question, like why didn't I come up with this before, or 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what's changed for you? What do you think has allowed this to happen?
I've a lot more freedom right now. So within the last 6 months,
No, sorry. I meant, like, what do you think changed before that allowed you to look at things differently? And you're saying, like, what when you look back, you don't know why you didn't do this 5 or 10 years ago. Like, what kind of allowed the change to happen in the first place, if you look back on it?
what I
Like,
think allows me to be able to do that now is I ha- although I had like elements of passion in all of the jobs that I've had over the years working for big corporations, there was always that was always overcast by the routine, the mundane, that I've got to get up, I've got to go to work, and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. Now it's more I do things because I want to. There's a complete shift in tone in my voice with nothing. Nothing ever says to me now, oh, like you've got to do this. This has got to be done. Now the tone in my voice, the tone in my head is this. I want to do this, or I'm going to do this. Like it's just completely different. And having that, I think that's cleared space in my own mind um, to allow for these elements that I'm using now, where I can like step outside of myself and take a look. More recently, I embarked on some therapy, which has like massively helped. And there's a lot of techniques that I use that my therapist teaches or has suggested. And one of those is, or part of that is to take stock of yourself, take stock of your own feelings, stop and breathe. But I think maybe if somebody would have told me that a couple of years ago, I'd have thought they're a bit potty or a bit crazy, and yeah, I probably wouldn't have taken it on board. But I think it's a combination of everything, all the little things that have happened or are happening, all just syncing up with each other and forming a stronger bond. I think when I was stuck in the corporate world of working, there wasn't many other elements to pull in. It was my mind was pretty much just encased, and all you did was get up, go to work, finish work, go home, and it was kind of just that. Like there was no space in my head to allow these other things in. Um, it was just military style, next day, next day, next day, next day. Yeah, and allowing myself that space, or the things that have changed in my life more recently that I've allowed myself that space, or that this is my analysis of it anyway.
yeah.
When I take that look back, it's something that something's allowed space in my head now to be able to do these certain things, allow my mind this headspace to reevaluate certain situations, take myself out of a situation and have a look at the situation. Whereas I think beforehand, just being all consumed with, with having a job and working all the hours I could, uh, in the hope or I think belief that I was progressing myself or doing it to better myself. Work more, work harder, get a promotion or get a better job. And now looking back, it's all just it just wasn't right at all. None of the things that I told myself at those times were correct. And it's
This
crazy.
this idea though of your head being encased, that's a crazy kind of like image or something, like, or crazy strong image. I mean, if you know what I mean. Like, there's just, I think like when you don't have any time or space to consider anything else other than the work itself, it does, like, life just spins around this one object, and it's hard to think that other things exist, I guess.
Yeah. So I have a friend that has a motorbike, and he wears a helmet, but then he wears one of those, like, I don't know if you've ever seen them, the crazy wacky helmet covers. They're like huge. You can get all kinds of different ones. You can get like the Cookie Monster, and like they're bonkers. So if you think of having the helmet on, then having this encasing over it, I think like that's what I was like, maybe at the start of last year. Not only was my head encased, I then had this like additional layer over it that was so I couldn't even see the casing. And I think slowly but surely, the the thought of or the notion that I could actually break this mold was then I've taken this, wacky headdress off, but I've still got this helmet on. I'm still stuck, or very much enclosed, and the only thing, the majority of things that's going on in my head, I just, work up, work home, work, um, and then having the courage to actually write, hand in my notice. This is happening. I think almost instantly it felt like that's it. The helmet was off, and then yeah, bizarrely, you've all this extra space in your head to process certain things. And don't get me wrong, I have a lot. Like my days are probably busier now than they were when when I was when I was employed full time. But I do things that bring me joy. Um, they they fit my purpose. They Even though I was doing certain things within certain roles that I had that brought me joy, it was never. I was never fulfilled. Never. There wasn't. There wasn't that. Like I said earlier, there was a hole in my soul. There was nothing like. And I think for a long time, so I worked for one employer for 5 years, and then previous to that I worked for another employer for 5 years. And I think when you first start out, you've got that fire, and that there are things that that feed your soul, but you slowly but surely get destroyed with that extra hour you do a day. Then the can you just do this as well as doing that? And then, oh well, I've seen you've done such a good job at this, maybe you could try doing this piece of work and this piece of work as well. And then you get roped into, oh well, we gave this project to somebody else, but they're not really doing a good job, like could you step in on top of the other 5 things that you're doing currently? And then yeah, and slowly but surely. But I've had this conversation with quite a few people, in terms of, in a lot of places, the more you give, the more they'll take. But it's difficult because you try and give more because you want to show that you're capable of more so that you can move up. So the how as a human do I draw that balance of, I don't want you wouldn't want to go into a new job and be like, well, I'm only going to do like the bare minimum, because I don't want you to abuse, like to take advantage of my skills, whatever. You're going to go in all fired up, and I think that's what's happened with me, a few times now I'm able to look back is, yeah, I have that passion and that drive for maybe the first year, into the second, and then all of a sudden you've that realization that, wait, they're just taking advantage of me just because I've shown willing, or I've shown I'm capable, or but now I get to show my willing and show I'm capable with either clients that I work with or with projects that I'm working on, and I don't need the appreciation of others. I get that satisfaction just from seeing either that client grow or my own business grow or that project be successful. And I get way more satisfaction out of that than I ever did even in the starting periods of new jobs, when you're all excited and like, yeah, this is a new project, I can really make a difference here. Now I think, moving forward on my analysis of it is that, I'm going to have that for a long period now. It's not going, this isn't going to be that fire and excitement for only a year or so until I start getting taken advantage of or taking on too much work without any appreciation or additional compensation. Now it's kind of like the things that I do every day bring me joy. I look forward to Sundays. I love Sundays. Sunday's my prep day. I like organize my week. People think I'm bonkers, like sat at my desk for hours, like just making lists and writing schedules and just getting everything prepped for the week. And then Monday's my busiest day, but I love Mondays. There's certain meetings I have every Monday, project meetings, and Mondays are awesome. But if I run through some of the things that I do day to day with someone, they're like, and especially my mum. She's probably my number one fan, but at the same time, she's a big cheerleader, but at the same time, she just loves chipping in with, you need to rest, you need to take a break. But I think a lot of people don't understand or haven't yet had the opportunity to experience the difference between, she just sees what I do now for myself as probably the same as what she does in her employment. And, don't get me wrong, she's worked for the same employer for 14 years or something. She doesn't enjoy it. She likes the people there, but she just goes to work. That's just what she does. Monday to Friday, she goes to work because it pays the bills. So I think she often says to me, like, you're working too hard, you need to take a rest. But to me, the majority of what I do is it's not work. Like, I love what I do. And to me, it's just another day I get to see people achieve, see myself achieve, help other businesses, help my own business, complete a project, start a project. To me, it's not the majority of it. I'd say more than 90% of what I do day to day, I really don't consider as work.
When you mentioned earlier this sense of like like trying to fill a hole in yourself almost, or not finding something fulfilling, like what's that sense like of, or that, because I know it myself, like in just, there's almost like a feeling of being a bit lost and then continuously doing the same thing because you don't know what the thing that you want to do is, or something. Like it's a strange experience in that, like, we're safe, like we're comfortable, like from a shelter, food, and different things like that. I know you mentioned you still have your friends in your life. Like, I know you also said that you're extremely busy, so you don't maybe get to do some of the things that support you as well as you can. But what's that feeling like, if you cast your mind back? Like, what is that feeling like again? Like, where it's just like, okay, there's nothing terribly wrong with my life, but it's starting to feel a bit empty, or something in that kind of area for me anyway.
I've had several periods of exactly what you've just described throughout my life, and I often refer to them as peaks and troughs. And sometimes I take drastic actions when I'm in a trough, that an example of that would be changing jobs. Like, oh, this is what I need. I need a new employer. I need a completely new job. I need new things to work on. I need a new project, something juicier to sink my teeth into. But I know that I've thought to myself several times, that I am lost. But I think it is having those fundamentals, having the fundamentals like your food, money in the bank, shelter, having those kind of just, it tricks you into thinking that, oh yeah, like everything's okay, but they aren't everything. I think right now, like looking back on certain situations, I'd have rather had none of those and more of my soul or more of my mental sanity. Because I honestly think that throughout periods of my life, I've been bonkers, you know, and I can look back at those periods and say, yeah, like during that time, yeah, I don't think I was. I don't. If you looked at me from the outside, I don't think I don't. I wouldn't be perceived as sane. Like, but now people tell me. Now people think, oh, you're crazy for what you do or the effort that you put into everything, etc. But it's completely different now because, yeah, I don't. My mind's just in a completely different place. But many periods throughout my life, actually. I think what I've tried to do is just fill those holes with the wrong thing. It's like out of the frying pan into the fire. I've jumped from one job where, okay, I'm feeling underappreciated, undervalued, underpaid. I'll just go and get another job thinking that like it's going to be different next time. But then, maybe it would have been, maybe I could have steered it to being, but I was still the same person. I didn't make any changes to me. I still went in to the new job with full enthusiasm and yeah, Dean can do everything. And, there isn't, yeah, those tasks are too small. Yeah, I'll build that. What do you mean that's broken? I'll fix it. I'll come up with a new solution. I'll integrate that with that. Like, what do you mean it can't be done? Dean can do it. So I just repeated the cycle, but now the only thing I've changed was my environment. I just changed who I worked for, but I was just doing the same thing over, same thing, and then ended up in the same situation, and then asking myself, well, what's wrong with you now? Like, you've changed jobs. I think many times the things you tell yourself or your head tells you aren't necessarily true, but it's difficult to know that actually what my head's telling me isn't correct. So like my head would tell me all the time, oh yeah, you just, you're not happy because you've got this, you're working for this particular employer or you've got this job. Like that's the only reason you're not happy. Right, I know how to fix that. I just get a new job. That's easy. Get a new job. But it wasn't. I don't know if there was if I was more open. I think back then to certain changes that I've made now, maybe I'd be in a different situation. But I was very. What's the word? Very skeptical to a lot of things. I think quite a few years ago, a couple of people very close to me suggested maybe try therapy. And my response back then, I remember my response back then, I was like, I'm not crazy. Like, I don't need therapy. What do I need a therapist for? I'm absolutely fine. I've got money. I've got a house. Like, I've got a good life. I've got friends. I don't need a therapist. But more recently, and after having very, very good sessions with a therapist that was recommended to me, it's opened up my eyes to a lot of things. It's crazy how much we carry around with us, and how much affects us without us actually knowing, which I think is is scary, really. It certainly when I came to certain realizations, over the last few months, it scared me to think, wow, like I carried that with me for a long time, but without realizing, but I let it affect me. And there's certain things now that I've unpacked that I didn't even know I needed to unpack. Um, which, yeah, it's mind blowing. Um, I still get myself tangle my own head trying to unpick certain things and work out why did I how did I unbox that? Like, why did I unbox that? When did I box that up?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
how long have I been carrying that round with me? And there's certain things that I've been through in life that I know I boxed up. There's certain things that happen to everyone, I'm sure, that that they box up and package up and sit to the back of their mind. Um, but I don't think people realize, actually, you know, no matter what no matter what you're boxing up, be it big, small, a trauma, an incident, and anything, it really doesn't matter what the item is that you've boxed up. Just the fact that you have actually packaged it up and moved it to a different place in your mind without actually processing it or dealing with it, I think has such an effect, um, on on our minds, on us all. And it wasn't only affecting. I know that some of my actions didn't just affect me; they affected people around me, affected certain friendships, affected certain relationships. But when you're in it, you can't see.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, what you're saying there, I think the really amazing thing about some of those situations is that until you, like, as you kind of say there, unbox them, you don't. It's amazing when you look back on it to think that you never thought that this was a thing driving so much difficulty in our lives. Like, and it can be for really seismic things as well. Like, even I mentioned this on a different podcast. I gave myself a narrative that my old man leaving the family home never bothered me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's like, for everything that I know that I've looked at now in life, like, I find it kind of staggering that it took me until the age of 31 or 32 to think that that might not be true.
I,
Do
t- I tell I've had a very similar narrative running through my own life for years. Tell myself that certain things that happened in my childhood didn't affect me. Like, I'm stronger than that.
Yeah,
They
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I not that well, maybe knowing deep down that they affected me. I think my understanding of it back then was knowing deep down that they affected me then, but I won't let them affect me now. That was what I carried with me for such a long time, that I had that recognition that, yeah, these, like, certain things that happened in my childhood were that, they were big events. They were things um that that had an effect, but constantly telling myself that they had, it was past. I,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then I carry that narrative through, that I'm not letting these, but then coming to the realization that, actually, just by saying that, I'm carrying that with me. Like, even just telling somebody that story, like, no, I don't let it affect me. Just repeating those words is recognition that it is with you and it is affecting you. You're having to
Wow.
tell, like, but yeah,
So,
mind
like,
blown.
yeah, when you say that, actually, that's given me a realization that I've actually been kind of framing that incorrectly, in the sense of, from my own perspective, saying, how didn't I realize that? But you've just reminded me of something that I said for the longest time with great pride, that it's not going to affect me. Like, I'm too damn strong. Do you know what I mean? And then coming up with almost like this, like, like, I had these like 6 points learned off, that when people used to ask me about it, is, in hindsight, when I looked at it, I'd say, the like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom. That's why it doesn't affect me. That's why I'm grateful. That's why I'm lucky. Do you know what I mean? Or that's why I don't let it affect me. But yeah, it's so true. Like I did see it, but it was more that I made I had this outward idea that I wasn't going to let it affect me, which that's the crazy part, I think, because
Is the crazy part, and I think I had the exact same. I had a script, but I had the script nailed as to if somebody would ask me about certain things, it was exactly like you said, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like you just reel this script off and say, yeah, but I don't let it affect me because how of course it's not affecting me. Look at me, I've got this really good job, and I've got this car, and I've got this like a house, and I've got this life and these friends. And it was literally just, I would reel this off. And I think maybe if you tell yourself something so many times, you come to believe it. But it's yeah, it's I want to say a different word other than crazy, but I can't think of anything other than it is mind blowing when you actually realize that just by saying, I don't let it affect me, is like absolute recognition that it is affecting you because it's still there. You're carrying it around. Yeah, and there's a few things like that quite fortunately I've been able to unbox recently, and I've had the headspace to unbox, and I've had the right people around me to help me, unpack and deal with in the correct way. Because I think many times throughout my life I've probably tried to or maybe not consciously tried to unpack these, things in my head. Maybe they've just started to unravel and unpack themselves, and then I've chose the most inappropriate ways to deal with it. But now, certainly in more recent months, yeah, having the space in my head to be able to process certain things and having the right people, professional help in unpacking certain things and unpacking certain things in the right way, has definitely helped.
yeah, it's I think it's really interesting though the way like because until for anyone who's listening as well, like until you realize even what you're doing, the rest of your behavior can't really make sense. And then I think I don't know about you, but like then I don't treat everyone around me so well because I've got this giant blind spot that's hurting me that I can't face. And instead of maybe just being aware of it and being able to give myself some empathy for the fact that I can't face it, because I've made it such a because I've covered it over so much with this narrative, then my behavior, like in how I'm treating other people, maybe even people I care about, like that's not very particularly that's not always particularly very nice. And then you go through the almost this double shame cycle of the pain you're still feeling but you're not allowing yourself to feel or not allowing yourself to acknowledge, and then the shame of how you're also behaving. It's like it really like I think so much of just the behavior we judge other people for in life, I rarely think that people want to do mean things or bad things to each other. I usually think it comes from something that they're trying to handle themselves, which they can't presently handle. I don't think many people get out of bed in the morning and say, it'd be really great if I screw up this relationship or if I hurt that person. Clearly, I'll go to bed much better. I'll fall asleep soundly. No, that's the stuff that keeps you up at night the next night. Then
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you're right there. With I think the same about people. I don't think when even with bad things that have happened to me, by a particular individual, I don't necessarily blame that person. I don't think that person got out of bed that morning and decided, "Do you know what, I'm going to be an absolute." But it's that they've got their own issues and narrative in their head that's affecting them, that's now affecting me. and now it's a snowball, because now I'm not in a great space because of the way I'm affected by somebody else that's affected by somebody else, and it's just a ripple effect. Where does it end? And I think, certainly doing the work on yourself is going to make a massive impact. But I think if more people were able to come to the realization of, or even, people don't talk enough.
Yeah.
For a long time, I just didn't talk, you know, I just didn't talk to people about certain things, shut them off, packaged them up. Um, and I'm not saying that we all should go around just telling every stranger that we meet on the street, or, even friends and family, oh, they're like, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what's going on with me, and this is inside my head, because I don't think that's the solution. But having that someone, and I'm quite fortunate, or I feel very grateful to have been given the opportunity to have that someone uh, who I can offload to, and who is capable of helping me unpackage certain things. And in doing so, I know for certain, without sounding egotistical, that I have had a positive effect on people around me now. Whereas I know, looking back, I had a very negative effect on some people that I was around, because of the headspace that I was in. But now, now being in a better headspace has enabled me to have those better relationships, have a better connection, have a deeper understanding of what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and why I'm doing it, rather than just doing it and not having the capacity to think of the what, when, why, and how, just actually rolling with it. And the effect that I've seen on me is profound. Like, I love it, but but it's even nicer to see that the effect that you're having on other people, and especially when you see somebody, maybe that you've been working with or working for, kind of come out of their shell, or take that little extra step that for sure that hadn't they had if you hadn't have had that conversation with them, that they might not have taken that step. And then more so with working with certain clients, when you see, when you are like, I'm a positive person, these days, and a lot of people will comment on that, and I think that positivity rubs off on people. And I tried previously to be a positive person, but the majority of it was fake. I was just its act. I was acting as a positive person. I was acting that I was happy. I was acting that everything was okay. And although that may have washed with certain people, it doesn't have the lasting effect that genuine happiness and genuine positivity has. And now the people that I talk to, the clients I talk to, the business associates that I talk to, my friends, my family, like, the feedback that I get, and that, people telling me, just love your positivity, like, it's infectious. And they're quite right, it is infectious, because when I'm around people similar to that, with a similar presence to myself, then I just bounce off them, and it's an upward cycle then, rather than being trapped in this downward cycle that I feel like I was trapped in, last year, the year before, for many years of my life, actually.
It's I don't know, there's something very, like, kind of, I love the idea of hope. Like, in all these interviews I've done, like, I always love the fact that there's always some element of someone's story that just kind of gives you hope. Like, in that, if you're feeling like that you've been in quite a negative spiral, and that maybe things haven't been, that you haven't dealt with, maybe, or just even the choices that you're making, you're not allowing yourself to go and do what you want. Like, even your question at the start of all of this why don't we do the things that we know that we want to do or that we think are good for us? Why do we stay stuck in the old things that we know are consistently kind of bringing us down? And what I just always love about human behavior is that there always seems to be hope or the possibility of change. You know what I mean? As depressing as things look sometimes, even if it's in our own individual journey, like, because we've talked before, I can definitely relate to many of the aspects you're talking about, and even recognizing the need for change, dealing with things that I was burying, whatever it may be. But then there's always, like, I don't know, we have this crazy ability to be simultaneously get stuck for too long, but then also change when we need to change.
Yeah, and I think I've just realised as well, or what just popped into my head is that you're quite right with hope, and how important it is, and how strange it is that we can just find this hope somehow from somewhere. And I think what's really difficult sometimes is, or why certain situations play out for such long periods. So, for example, me working for the same employer for 5 years, being what I perceived as happy for maybe the first year, and then completely unhappy for 4 years. Like, what you've just made me think about is why I've always had hope, or I think I've always had hope. So why did I stick that out for a 5 year period? But I think it's, you draw hope from other people. So when other people show hope or have aspirations, it's far easier to find your own hope and your own dreams and your own aspirations. And I think with certain roles that I've had, when you get so stuck in the corporate bubble and everyone is just stuck doing the same, hope gets lost very quickly, and then it's difficult to see the hope or find your own hope. Or yeah, I think the more Yeah, so I think maybe in the situations where I have decided, right, enough's enough and I need to change, that I could probably go back and take a look at, actually, where did I draw the hope from at that particular time? And I'm pretty certain I could probably find, the scenario that actually gave me that hope. So yeah, so you never know when it's coming. And having the right people around you is so important. Not only was I spending the majority of my waking time in a job I now disliked, I was spending too much time with them same people. So we were no longer in the office moaning about the office. We were outside of the office socializing, moaning about the office. Like, as if none of us had anything better to do than just moan about the office. But it's quick. You can quickly. Well, I did got stuck in that cycle. So yeah, but I absolutely agree with you. It's great when it's really nice when you, like, more recently. It's easier for me to recognize where I'm drawing inspiration from and where I'm drawing hope from.
It's just looking at the time. Given where this conversation started with, of the question of why do we do the things that we don't want to do or that we recognize that aren't good for us, then kind of walking us through then your realizations in terms of, this is affecting my well-being, my friendships. There's a whole number of things that are happening for me. Then identifying the areas in which you develop enough courage to kind of to back yourself, but at the same time too also alluding to an inner journey that's, I'm not sure the timelines here, but just in the idea of what's been able to give you space to do these things. And you're referencing even with your therapist as well, coping strategies, abilities to kind of reflect on yourself. And then even just for both of us, even I guess reflecting on times where we're like, holy shit, these certain behaviors were driving us, and until we actually looked at them, we were always kind of getting caught by them or trapped by them or influenced by them without realizing we are influenced them. So almost just reflecting on the significance, I guess, of questioning our own story sometime too, right? Like reflecting on ourselves, but maybe even challenging our own points of view. And as you alluded to at one point, potentially like, having to do that on a very regular basis, because who knows what we're, what we could be deceiving ourselves with right now. But then also like looking at the sense of, you're talking about paying attention to, what do you want, not just going with the norm, and paying attention to what's satisfying your soul, not just kind of fulfilling the requirements maybe other people or expectations people may have in your life. And then just as we've just alluded to, this kind of, you mentioned about this sense of like positivity, but then reflecting on just where do we draw hope from, where do we draw inspiration from, having the right people around you, and kind of thinking back on certain moments and thinking there are probably key people at different stages or moments where you could draw that, even if it wasn't within yourself. Given everything we've kind of discussed, Dean, as I tend to finish these conversations off with, it's with the question of what is a good life for you, sir? What comes to mind for you?
I think for me, it's being true to myself, finding that truth, finding who I truly am, and what truly makes me happy. And that's not by saying, that's by getting real with yourself, and being honest and serious with yourself, and not letting other people's perceptions, ideas, or not letting other people's perceptions or ideas cloud the answer to that question. Is like, what truly does make me happy, not what do I think makes me happy because that makes other people happy. Like, actually, what truly makes me happy? What do I enjoy doing? Um, yeah, and I think there's the journey that I'm on at the minute, is self discovery and discovering those elements of me that will hopefully help me answer that question a bit more next. If I then ask myself that question in a few months, I've got a better I always wanting to have a better understanding of me, but the true me, not this version of me that I might project to certain people, or this version of me that I created because I needed to in a certain situation. Like, actually, who is the real me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Who am I, and what am I?
Which is, I think, that's a constantly like evolving question, right? Or that's one to touch base with all the time. And yeah, I find it so interesting in all these interviews that I'm doing, like how challenging or confronting a question that can be for people as well. And all the different things that we try to hide from ourselves and hide from other people, that can be a hell of a journey. But it sounds like one that you're most earnestly embarking upon anyway, Dean. Well, look, Dean, thank you so much for joining us here on the What is a Good Life podcast. I've really enjoyed our conversation once again. And yeah, much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure. Really nice to talk to you.